To put it simply, the Raptors are changing, and the overwhelming message behind that change is to put the ball in Scottie Barnes' hands. He is overpowering, quick thinking, and willing to trample over anyone who gets in his way. One of the best ways to utilize those things is the post up. Last week, we watched how Barnes tried to skirt some of his limitations to make pick and rolls work, and now we're looking into a play type that leans into some of his biggest strengths. To put it quickly, I watched every single Scottie Barnes post up. We have the film, we have the data. Let's get into it. If you go poke around on NBA advanced stats, Barnes is in the 33rd percentile as a post up player, but that's only accounting for when he takes the shot, gets fouled, or turns it over. For a player whose best attribute is passing, that's never going to be very complimentary. So the numbers that we get are probably going to confirm a lot of people's prior thoughts, and Barnes was in the top quarter of the NBA for post-up frequency in the 76th percentile and 54th in points per chance at 1.019. At the very least, we're in the top half of the league here, which was different than how the pick and rolls went. Some forecasting and educated guesswork on my end, I strongly believe that Barnes could have elite numbers in the post if the Raptors had more shooting on the roster. The spacing has hampered a lot of his possessions, and it's just far too often that the teams can keep 3 or more players positioned in the paint to crowd his post-ups and do so without even committing to a double. Similar to the pick and roll, and similar to most things, Barnes was far more efficient as a passer out of post-ups at 1.234 points per chance versus the scoring at 0.952 points per chance, and that's a really big difference in the numbers, to be certain. The difficult thing is that his volume as a playmaker will have a cap on it to some degree until he starts bending defenses a little bit more. If Barnes tries to get middle, teams can slide to crowd him and funnel the ball above the break by bringing everyone down. If he tries to drop step baseline, he can easily get walled off by a big man shading to him, and the wing or guard will drop down to the corner and start zoning up the weak side. Post-ups are a slow way to score points, so when teams funnel the ball above the break to a team that was 3rd worst in the NBA in above the break threes, A, they're missing a lot, and B, they're getting into late clock isolation situations. If you just put a bit more shooting around Barnes, you can take away the goalie in the paint or put someone on the floor with a bit more punch above the break. Anything helps. I talked to a lot of scouts for my coverage, and here's a quote from an NBA team scout in the Eastern Conference. Quote, "He killed us on cross matches, then he killed us on regular matchups, then he found a way to do it against our big man. He's tough because he's constantly testing different places on the body. If you load up on the right foot, he'll plow through your left shoulder. He finds ways to move you. His pickup points are so awkward that it makes it so tough to time him up too. He can really pick guys out, so doubling is hell. He's just really tough there. Luckily, there's not a lot of shooting for you guys in Toronto, so you can kind of clog the paint and help from the top. The very same thing hurts Pascal. They just need more room." End quote. And so when teams did commit to the double, 17 possessions out of the 154 I tracked, Barnes made a pass that led to an advantage 82% of the time. And here's the thing, Barnes can absolutely maul guards out of the post. He used 115 possessions at 1.1 points per chance, and teams still only doubled him 17 times. They can get away with packing the paint way too easily. Barnes reads the floor incredibly well and can make any pass available to him. And on the scoring side of things, if Barnes is left to work without too much crowding and he's able to get to his hook shot, preferably his right-handed hook shot from the left block, he's uniquely efficient. Through the first 61 games of his career, Sports Info Solutions had been tracking contested hook shots league-wide, and to that point, Barnes was the 3rd most efficient scorer on those at 57%. This season, I tracked Barnes' contested hook shots at 55%. Barnes is really tough to stick in an isolated post-up. He's constantly changing direction, but always maintaining his downhill momentum. When he's good and ready to shoot, he affords very few defenders the benefit of fading away. He's springing for the bucket whether you're there or not, and it leads to these immense, overpowering finishes against titans of the paint for and ones. If you're diminutive, he pursues the airspace above you. His right hand elevates, and he transforms into a smiling, athletic Statue of Liberty, and his touch is fairly immaculate. Given how difficult his shots are, the fact that he hits as often as he does is terrific. He gets defenders offbeat with these odd pickup points that can come at his neck into 2 hands, or he can scoop before gathering above his head and immediately launching a hook. His legs are almost never important, and he somehow manages to always square himself to the bucket. Like there's a magnet or a homing beacon or something guiding him towards where he needs to be. It's a remarkable skill and makes him particularly talented at skating through grimy post play with efficient buckets. And just to focus in on this possession against Alex Caruso, who is considered one of the best defenders in the NBA and no slouch on cross matches, you've heard the term low man wins. This is how a lot of guards who are cross matched contend against post up players. And the best post up players know how to navigate this by changing where the defender engages with your body. That's why we'll see Scottie moving a bunch. If Barnes doesn't change direction while backing down here, Caruso will be able to load up and keep him at bay by putting his knee under Barnes' thigh, lifting Barnes' center of gravity, keeping his lower, and kind of muting that strength difference. But by changing where he has to meet him consistently, he keeps him off balance and removes the ability to load up, and eventually actually turns his post up into a sort of runway where we get this explosive dunk out of a post up. This type of play is really rare in the NBA, and it speaks to a testament of how unique a mover Barnes actually is. And similar to what we discussed with pick and roll, Barnes usually benefits a lot from off-ball actions to occupy the weak side or actions prior to his own. Barnes dribbled into about a third of his post-ups, did early work in pseudo-transition for hit-aheads, and got a healthy amount of cross screens and pistol actions for post entries. He scored 1.280 points per chance on post-ups that came after off-ball screens. Big numbers. And while going straight to a post-up isn't necessarily the best decision for the offense last year and probably this year, Barnes cutting to the basket after getting rid of the ball can always yield something. And there's a lot that can go right for Barnes in a post-up. After all, he did create an advantage for the team on 48% of his post-ups, more than double the rate of advantage creation in pick and rolls, and especially if he's surrounded by a better context. However, he can shoulder some of that load himself if he improves as a shooter. He only shot 34.7% on his jumpers out of post-ups, and most of those are makeable and within 15 feet. That's well within his control to improve. He can get pretty panicked at the end of the shot clock if he's stuck out on the perimeter and spamming clunky dribble combos before forcing up something crazy and usually missing. Barnes has gifts that Siakam doesn't, but if the Raptors are going to continue to have Barnes work out of the same phone booth that Siakam has, comfortability in the mid-range would help a lot, especially off the bounce. We'll see. It's funny, the pick and roll initiation versus the post-up initiation seem like polar opposites because the former was mostly an example of Barnes's limitations and how everyone tried to navigate them, whereas the latter seems like the roster's limitations are showing up and Barnes is trying to navigate them by himself with his tremendous gifts. It's funny how that works. This season could give us a lot to chew on with how Barnes is used, and especially how the Raptors try to utilize the post-ups and spacing in concert with one another. I suppose we'll see. Hope you enjoyed the deep dive into Scottie's post-up game. Despite middling returns of last season and the difficult offensive context, I think this is a really strong play for him. Here's the pitch, as it was at the end of the first video, the pick and roll video. The subscription model, the subscription base, is what makes my deep dives possible. It's what allows a lot of young writers to skip the student loan aspect, the free internship aspect that most people need to do to get into sports writing, to get into, let's say, sports content. Raptors Republic pays their workers, and part of why we're able to do that is because of the subscription base. My work is paywalled behind there, Louis Zatzman's work is paywalled behind there, among some other writers. As far as analysis of the Raptors, it doesn't get better than Raptors Republic. As far as analysis of Team Canada basketball, it doesn't get better than Raptors Republic. And we tell stories and game day pieces and everything along with it. There's a thriving community there. We'd love to see you over there. If you subscribed, it means the world to us. And it helps keep something that has been, a pillar of basketball coverage in Canada alive. So, hope you enjoyed the video. Consider subscribing. Thank you so much. And we'll see ya.